Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone that was waiting for us. Thank you for everyone that watches this in replay. I do appreciate that. As always, remember, big tech is censoring us. So the best way to get that truth out there is to share this video, because I'm getting to the point. Oh, dang it. Hold on a sec. I had my YouTube channel up, so I started hearing myself talking. That got annoying. Like I was saying, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm noticing YouTube actually delete comments off of my videos because it doesn't like it. It's not held for review. They just completely delete them, thinking that I can't figure it out. So with us tonight is Mr. Rick Ector, man from Detroit who's been dedicated a lot of his life on teaching people about gun safety and reaching a better versions of themselves. And I'm very thankful to have him here with us tonight. It was kind of last minute, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." Okay, man. Okay, so everybody in the chat rooms, give them a round of applause. A round of applause as I bring them in, and let us know where you're coming at us from. I'd appreciate that. So, Mr. Rick Ector, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Hey, man, thank you for extending an invitation.
Now, for everyone out there watching this, there might be a slight latency issue doing with Detroit internet, but we will deal with that. We'll keep tracking. So, Rick, at what age did you get into guns and start learning about gun safety and wanting to, teach people about it?
Man, that would be a very late age. I would say I got into guns about 16 years ago, man. I bought a house and I figured I should buy a gun. So I bought a 12-gauge shotgun. And that was pretty much my only firearm until I got robbed at gunpoint in my driveway. And then that started me down that rabbit hole, man. That rabbit hole where you see your life suddenly pass before your very eyes and you say to yourself, gee, if I ever had another chance, if I could do this over again, I'd do things a little differently. Well, yeah, I made it through that event a little, I wouldn't necessarily say battered, but I definitely had an experience. And true to my word, I kept the promise that I made to myself, and I bought handgun and took a concealed carry class, got a concealed pistol license, took every class I could get my hands on. And then I started looking into instructor training, became an instructor, started racking up certifications and started teaching. And then lo and behold, I got into advocacy. And man, that was another rabbit hole. It's just so many different things you can do in this gun community space, man. And I'm still finding new things to do, man. It never gets old.
Wow. So how'd you get into the advocacy part? Did you find other people that had the same experience as you, but they were just kind of less educated on how to deal with it?
Well, I kind of, I was watching this guy on the internet. Now, you may be familiar with him. He goes by the name of Ken. On the internet is a black man with a gun. And I was always wondering to myself, where do I fit into the gun community? I always wanted to do more, but I just didn't know exactly where I wanted to be within the community. And I stumbled upon Ken's website one day, man, and it was like a blessing, man. All my questions were solved, man. It was like, okay, this is the guy that I need to go to. It was like I was on a magic quest. You ever hear of this paradigm in the literary world called the hero's journey, where it supposedly is the framework for every story? Like there's a guy who's a normal everyday guy who lives an ordinary life, and then something extraordinary happens to this guy, and then he goes off on this quest to find this sage, this person with a lot of information, and then he talks to this advisor, and this advisor gives him some advice, and then he goes off onto a quest, and then he has a few battles along the way, and then he has the big giant battle, and then he ultimately prevails and he comes home the victor. Well, that's kind of like how my life was, man. I found Ken Blanchard and I ran into him. Well, I didn't run into him. I went to a gun rights policy conference years ago at Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. And my whole mindset was to go there and to meet this guy. Like, I was destined to meet this guy and be set on some magic quest, man. And I must have followed him around the whole conference, the entire 3 days. And once he figured out I wasn't so, he was just been pretty cool ever since. And man, we've worked on a lot of projects together, but I'll tell you, he's been a heck of a role model, you know, for me to hang out with when I was first getting into gun rights advocacy and figuring out exactly where I fit into this environment, into this space, man. But, you know, I'm out here and I'm doing my thing, man. And when the situation merits or there's some obvious parallels, I'm quick to pull him into what I'm doing. Or, you know what, whenever I have something going and I'm not sure what I should do, I'll give him a call and ask him for some advice.
Wow. So you kind of blanked out there for a second. You said that you were hanging out there for a few days and he had to figure out that you were not something.
Well, you know, I'm actually meeting him like here's the thing. He had his website persona, Black Man with a Gun, where he's pumping out episodes every week, right? And so I'm religiously listening to all of these episodes week after week, month after month, probably year after year, right? So I was like a total fan, right? And so in my head, I know this guy, right? But you know what? He has never met me, and he doesn't know me from the next stranger, right? And so I go to the conference where he's at, and I feel like totally at ease with him. And he's probably like, man, who is this weirdo following me all over the conference, right? And so after a while, he figured out that I was mostly harmless, you know, some fan following him around the conference. This is hilarious. Yeah, man, real good friend now. And I bring him into like projects I'm working on, or if there's something I'm curious about or I'm not sure how to proceed, I'll still give him a call and ask him for some advice. At least get his best take on it before I make a decision one way or the other.
So I have his website up right now. I thought I should bring it up since we were talking about him. That's fascinating. So what's the strangest conversations that you have with people about you being such a supporter of, you know, arming yourself?
Strangest conversation. Oh man, let's see. What's the strangest conversation?
In my experience, especially being in Georgia, is that a lot of black people are really funny when it comes to guns. So it just kind of shows me that when the Democrats, you know, back in the after the what do you call it, late 1800s, early 1900s, when they first started introducing that legislation to stop black people from owning guns, it's been working because most black people are just really funny when it comes to guns.
You know, there's an ongoing, recurring theme that comes up from time to time. And the times that we're going through now isn't so radically different. But whenever there's an incident that involves the police and, say, a citizen, and that interaction doesn't go well for the citizen and that it suggests culpability on the part of the police officer, you know, I'm talking about stories like the George Floyd issue, or whether we're talking about Ahmaud Arbery, or we're talking about Breonna Taylor. You know, when we're talking about those situations, when they come up, man, you know, some people will make the argument that it's not safe for a black person to own a gun or to embrace gun ownership because law enforcement might make a mistake or do something bad to you because you decided to exercise your right. And it's a ongoing concern that I hear from a very small minority of people who, I presume are anti-gun and are trying to scare people who are pro-gun from owning guns. And I think that for me anyway, it's a starter. I mean, the fact that you're making your argument based on a very minuscule sample or a very small percentage of the citizens that are out there who are in a position of authority, who would abuse their positions to trample over my rights and end up doing something negative to me. That isn't a strong enough reason for me not to be a gun advocate. That's not enough reason for me not to take on a more active role in my personal protection. Reason for me to just throw away all of my guns and just hope that nothing bad ever happens to me. I mean, I've already had a very bad incident, and that was being robbed at gunpoint in my driveway. And I made myself a promise that if I survived that incident, that I would never, ever be put in that situation again. And I've kept that promise to myself.
What went through your head when you were getting robbed at gunpoint?
Well, went through my head. I'll tell you when went through my head. It was like, okay, is this it? Gee, I'm about to get shot in a common armed robbery in my driveway. And I was like, wow, all the things that, I was planning on doing with my life, right? It's coming down to this, just things like, man, I was wanting to go skydiving, right? Or learn how to pilot a small plane, or seeing my small children graduate from high school, and walk them across the stage and watch them get married, and start their lives as an adult, man. Just all those things you pretty much take for granted that all of a sudden could be just snuffed out along with your life because some thug with a gun walks upon you in your driveway and he selfishly wants to take whatever possessions you have, and he's willing to threaten you with taking your life to take those things from you. Yeah, it was a very eye-opening moment, and it was life-changing in the sense that I had never assumed total responsibility for my safety. And it's something that I didn't take lightly, and that I knew that I would need to get the appropriate training, and not just superficial training like, okay, this is a gun and this is how to operate it. I mean, just like anything I could get my hands on, man, tactics, even principles of avoidance, observation, keeping your wits about yourself, psychology. I mean, you name it. I studied it, man. And, personal protection is a very diverse field, man. It has a lot of different areas of exploration. And I believe by studying all of these separate entities of the field, man, it does more than just put a gun in your hand. It can basically make you not even be present where bad things are happening, or it increases your awareness such that when you sense that the environment is conducive to you being victimized, that your awareness is such that you can remove yourself before any threats really appear and threaten your safety. So I've come a long way, man, a long way.
Okay, so recently you participated in some, what do you call them, peace rallies or peace protests. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Well, there was, of course, I mentioned earlier that there was 3 people that recently died, George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And I had sensed just from my online community, whether we're talking about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, in that space locally here in Detroit, that it was a growing area of concern. And I thought, man, someone should do something, right? And so every day I'm sitting here like, okay, I guess no one's doing something, right? So then I said, well, hey, why don't I do something? So with about 2 weeks notice, I put together a rally at our state's capital up in Lansing on the grounds of the Capitol. And I invited speakers from all over the state. And it wasn't, a huge gathering. It was about 50 people, man. And we set up a microphone and we gave speeches and oral essays about personal protection, and we talked about the world that we wished we lived in and what we could do to make our our future world a reality relative to the current one that we lived in, man. And it was a really good experience, and I got a chance to meet some personal protection and firearm safety and personal protection experts from all over the state, man. And I've been overwhelmed with the support that I've been given from a lot of people when they saw all the news coverage that this event garnered. There were no less than about 7 or 8 media appearances, all from that one event, man. And a lot of people reached out to me telling me that they wish that they were a part of it. So I'm encouraged, and I'm looking to do something else with this project going forward. Either reprise it in Lansing and just have a bigger pool of people to get involved and participate, or whether I want to move it around to different parts of the state, man. Right now, I'm open to input, but it seems like I have a lot of people who are interested in being a part of it, and I'm glad to see where this thing goes, man. Maybe we can make a difference.
I would hope so. There's a lot of people, or at least making a big enough difference for a few individuals, because that's where it has to start. So, do you feel like the media has been dishonest recently, and the fact that they are? Because I keep seeing these false comparisons between, white liberals. I'm sorry, white gun owners at their state capitals demanding to reopen the state, and they're trying to say, well, how is this okay, but not the writing okay? Like, can you talk to us about the blatant media dishonesty there?
Well, I know that there's been a lot of characterizations about some of the rallies that have taken place here in the state of Michigan at the Capitol. And granted, I wasn't there physically at those rallies, but based on, with the technology today, man, there were several live casts that were being broadcast over the internet. And I had a pretty good bird's eye view of most of what was happening there. Definitely heard most of the speakers. And to me, it seemed like a great gathering of people who had a concern about their civil rights, with regards to these stay-at-home orders. Granted, I understand the pandemic, and we obviously know more about it now than we did then. But even though then, when we didn't know as much as we know now, I still believe that, like in the gun arena, in the personal protection space, you are still ultimately responsible for your safety, whether it's coronavirus or whether it's a criminal with a 38 shoved into your gut. If you feel that you're safer at home, locked up, sheltered away, then fine. Stay at home and lock yourself in the house. If by chance you're willing to assume some risk and you're willing to take some common sense precautions, things that don't strike me as really weird. I mean, if you're a gun owner or had a decent mom, you probably are washing your hands every time you touch someone anyway, right? And you're not really getting close to strangers and people you don't know anyway. And personal protection, we preach, don't allow strangers come into your personal space. I mean, these are just common sense protection schemes that apply to criminals. It's the same thing with the virus. But, you just have to come to the conclusion, man, that life has risk. And as we're learning now, the risk from this virus is nowhere near as great as it was at one point in time. But at the end of the day, it is your life to live or to not live, to be free or to be locked up in your house. But that to me is outside of the purview or the bailiwick of the government, man. That's not the government's job. The government's job is to get out of our way and let us live our lives, man. And those are the parallels that I see in terms of some of the characterizations I've seen of some of the anti-stay-at-home rallies. I think were negative and unfortunate. You know, there were attempts to mischaracterize these people as engaging in unlawful behavior, and I saw it as a bunch of people who were exercising their constitutional right to protest. But you know, if you disagree with someone, you somehow feel in. At no point in time did I see anyone destroy any property, or at any time did I see someone enact violence against people. Maybe some people were a little outspoken with their criticism towards the government, but so what? That's what our First Amendment right is all about. It's about lobbying our government and telling our elected officials what we feel and what we think, so that perhaps they will do our bidding or suffer our wrath at the voting box. But it is our duty to let them know how we feel. And when I did my rally, you know, I got a chance, and you know what? It was really an opportunity that didn't necessarily manifest itself until the aftermath, when I look around and saw, okay, I marketed this event as one that would be inclusive. That is, I specifically chose a topic. You know, I was talking about the George Floyd, the Ahmaud Arbery, and the Breonna Taylor cases, you know, and how those cases were handled. And I figured that audience that would be most sympathetic to that presentation would be other African Americans, other Black people. And I was able to get a considerable number of them to come from all over the state to show up for a rally against hate. And since they come from my social circle, it was not a requirement that they bring guns, but I'm a gun guy, a firearms instructor, a gun rights advocate. Well, you know, it doesn't surprise anyone that those are the people in my social space online. So a lot of those people did show up, and a lot of those people did bring guns. And you know what? It made quite a news article for such a sizable number of Black people to show up at the Capitol to protest these killings and these murders while being lawfully armed with guns. So that was a great secondary effect. But I think our primary purpose was to draw attention to the three aforementioned murders that I talked about before. You know, the fact that we had guns was a secondary consideration, and it was a positive development, if I must say so myself.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And there was not, I don't think there was a national dissemination on your rally. You know, when there was white people with guns storming the Capitol, demanding the state to reopen, that was all over the place. You had that all over MSNBC and CNN and saying, see this is horrible. But when a bunch of Black people do it, they do everything they can to avoid it.
Well, it's not the popular narrative, man.
No.
You know, had the situation and circumstances been different, I mean, it would have been national news, you know, from one edge of the planet to the other. But since it was a bunch of Black people carrying guns, talking about, hey, we want some justice in the world of hate, and let's do something about it, and let's increase awareness. And oh yeah, we're lawfully armed, and we're advocating for people to be armed so that they don't be crime victims. Well, somehow that's not as newsworthy, and it really surprises people to find out that our rally actually happened right before other rallies that were taking place all over the country in all these big cities. So I guess you could say, in a word, they were following us because we were first. But our rally was definitely different also, because our rally was it was completely peaceful, and we didn't do anything negative. We weren't throwing things, and we weren't becoming enemies of law enforcement such that we were finding ourselves getting arrested. So I take pride in that as well.
That's wonderful. So How has now? I know a lot of the major cities in the U.S. have been dealing with a lot of rioting and just destruction. It's been horrible, but I haven't heard a lot coming out of Detroit. I think I found one story dealing with rioting in the past couple weeks, which is a bit unusual. So, how has your state been handling the, rioting and disarray there?
Well, I mean, in terms of actual rioting, that has been kept to a minimum, and that I will attribute to local leadership in the respective cities, man. Unfortunately, the city of Detroit still has a scar from the 67, 68 riots back here in Detroit. And we still have learned that lesson that it doesn't do you any good to be so angry that you actually burn up and destroy your city, because you still have to live there. There is It is just as effective to accumulate and amass in numbers and speak with one voice with respect to change that you would like to see. And by all means, I am a fervent and ardent supporter of the First Amendment, all the way up until you become a criminal and start destroying property and start harming other people. Then I'll have to draw a line and say, gone too far. But as far as amassing large groups of people speaking with one voice, speaking to your elected representatives and telling them the things that you want to see, you know what? It doesn't even matter what you're advocating for. I might completely disagree with what you're talking about. Just the fact that you're doing it in a law-abiding fashion, that's all. That's all you can ever ask for. And I will say the people in our community have done it, and I must say that I'm very proud of them in terms of speaking passionately and obeying the law and not trashing our town and not committing violence.
That's good. I was thinking it might be tied to the 67 riots, because I was looking at that. I was reading up on that for a bit, and that was atrocious because I saw they had to bring in tanks to deal with it.
Yeah, tanks and the National Guard, and that brought on a whole host of other problems, and I do know local leadership was saying that they did not want to repeat those visuals from the 60s, and to broadcast those images, in 2020. But it seems like we have a handle on what's going on, man, and the people who are protesting, they have their opportunity to say what changes they want to see. There have been some changes that I think have been totally, in my personal opinion, unreasonable, such as I've heard talk of some groups wanting to disband law enforcement and get rid of the police and all of that stuff. I mean, I totally disagree with that notion, but if that's an agenda that you want to peaceably advocate for, go right ahead. I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you make the argument, and I'll vehemently disagree with you. And if I need to counter demonstrate, I will, but I don't think anyone is looking to do anything that radical. Certainly, there should be some changes as appropriate to get rid of some police brutality issues that may exist, because we have a very small few minuscule numbers of officers of the law who chooses the outside of the law. But I believe that those bad actors are limited and that they're small, and that with a concerted effort on everyone's behalf, we can work towards eliminating those bad characters.
I agree. That's I think there is definitely things that need to be done about law enforcement. There can be discussions had, but everybody's so focused on being emotional and acting crazy that those discussions can't be had. And those are discussions that have to happen in each individual agency, precinct, or jurisdiction as needed, because we have over 3,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. Just this past weekend, there was I live in a very rural area. Somehow we still had a protest here. It was peaceable for the most part. People were being dicks though. and it was a BLM protest. BLM protest. It was like 98% white, and they had big signs that said reinstate Kaepernick, and they had some George Floyd signs. I'm thinking, Kaepernick never played for Georgia, and Minneapolis don't give a shit about Georgia. Don't give a shit about us right now because they have their own issues. I don't understand who they're actually think they're protesting to. I think people have become disconnected with how you affect change.
Well, I will tell you that local leadership here took issue with outside agitators being present in our town to protest. You know, on the first night, there might have been 100 people arrested, and from the published reports I saw, better than 80% of them were people from outside the city. You know, they were here to just cause nothing but trouble and chaos. Outside agitators to make it a non-peaceful protest. And I like the fact that local leadership stepped up and that they took care of these people appropriately and that they addressed it by putting them into custody. Like I said, man, the Second Amendment was to protect the First Amendment. I'm a huge First Amendment advocate. By all means, if you want to protest, amass in numbers, speak with one voice, advocate for change. But I draw the line at and doing violence and trashing the city and burning things up, man, and assaulting people. That's where I draw the line. That's where you go from protester to criminal.
So, yeah, that's correct. So what did the local leadership do about these interlopers that as soon as they picked them up? Did they release them the next day? Did they bust them back? Did they say burn your own house down?
Well, I mean, you know, they're like anyone else. They're citizens who obviously have some type of grievance. If the officers arrest them, you know, fine, arrest them, and based on what the charges are, you know, a determination will be made if they can get bail, and if someone bails them out, then, you know, they're free to make a decision as to whether they're going to go home and be nice or whether they're going to continue to protest and get arrested later. But, you know, who are to tell someone how fervently they are to advocate for their cause? As I stated before, I personally will fight for your First Amendment right all the way up until you start engaging in criminal behavior. And then I will want law enforcement to address you and to deal with you appropriately.
I concur. So with your what do you call it? Your CCW, your Concealed Carry Academy, I guess you call it. You are specifically trying to train more women. What brought that about? What brought that campaign about?
Oh man, 8 years ago, I saw a very distressing story on the news media. Man, I saw a story about a woman who was killed and her body was just discarded on the street as if she was trash, man. And like that other story, you know, I was like sitting back going, man, someone should do something about that, right? Wow. Someone should do something about that, right? And then so suddenly I self-appointed myself to do something about it, right? See a common recurring theme here, right? I'm hoping and waiting for someone to do something and someone doesn't. And then I somehow pick up the hero's mantle and go on this heroic quest, right? And so I said, well, look, why don't I leverage my friendships I have in the gun community, and why don't I speak with a local gun range? And I talked the local gun range into letting me use their range for free. I got a bunch of guys to loan me some guns. And I went to social media and I was able to convince 50 women that I never knew to meet me at a gun range for a free shooting lesson. And I felt pretty good about it. I thought, man, I should have been able to do like a couple hundred, but you know how it is. The first time you do something, feeling your way around. And I was speaking with my friend Ken Blanchard, and he was telling me, man, hey, just keep going. And that next year we trained 100 women for free, and then we found ourselves multiplying output. 200 became 400, 500, 600, 700. Last year we did 814. And so now I am sufficiently emboldened to train 1,000 women how to load, handle, operate, and discharge a handgun at a gun range. I want to do 1,000 women in one day. And obviously I need resources to do that, man. And I literally have an army of 100 plus credentialed firearms instructors who I've enlisted to help me with that project, man. And range safety officers. And I'm very heavily dependent on donors to the program. This year is going to be a little different in that I have to keep in mind concepts such as social distancing, and I'm going to need extra supplies, man. Maybe some face masks and hand sanitizers and all sorts of earplugs and stuff to make it nice and sanitary and socially distant. Assistance from donors who want to make a contribution to our site, man, to send us, hey, I'm not bashful, man. Send us some cash. We're trying to raise training for 1,000 women. Well, I need everything. I need PPE. I need everything. You name it, I need it.
Okay, so everybody watching this right now or watching this as a replay, all of Rick Ector's contact information is all of his links is in the description of this video. His Facebook page, his official Detroit CCW page. Go ahead, go check that out, and that's where you can find a way to send donations. What is some of the best and probably strangest responses you've gotten out of these women that have come here for their first weapons lesson?
Man, there's all sorts of stories out there. I'll say the one that I like best was this woman, God bless her. She was from Chicago, and she was visiting a friend, and this friend was making her way to my free shooting event. And this woman, she was from Chicago, so she was anti-gun. But the friend that she was visiting said, look, I'm going to this free gun lesson. You can either stay home and wait for me to come back later and then we can hang out and have fun, or you can come with me to this gun event and watch me shoot a gun. And so this anti-gun person really did not want to go to this event, but she didn't want to be left at home in Detroit. So she came with her friend to the shooting lesson. And this woman who hated guns, she was one-on-one with the firearms instructor. She learned how to shoot, and she had such a blast, pun intended, that she made promises and plans to buy a gun and become a regular avid shooter, man. And that's what I tell folks. If you find someone that doesn't like guns, man, they haven't actually shot one. There's no way you can shoot a gun and not love shooting a gun.
That's true.
Changing minds one person at a time, man. That's all it takes. One person at a time.
So Irina has a suggestion. She says, try to get ammo manufacturers there for free advertising. Get on radio station for mass coverage during events.
I hear you, and I'm working on it. I was gearing up my PR campaign all the way up until May 10th or so. That was like my cutoff, because my event was officially for May 17th, and we had to cut it. We had to cancel it because of, concerns about the coronavirus. And so now I'm in the process of trying to re-ramp up that publicity stream and, build up a full head of steam and get people re-enthused about it, because I got them all geared up for it to happen and then we had to postpone it. So now I have to get everyone re-enthused and re-energized. So hopefully I'll be able to make that happen, man. But yeah, I really want to train 1,000 women how to shoot a gun in one day. If there's anybody that can do it, it's probably me.
So you're so humble.
Well, man, I mean, you know, I trained 814 last time. I mean, hey, I don't. You know what? I'll tell you what. You may say I lack modesty, man, but I don't know of anyone else that's doing anything close to what I'm doing. And you know what? It's not bragging if you can back it up, man.
That's true. That's true. That's a pretty deep cause there. Do you get a lot of notoriety within the community about it? Does like the local leadership of the community or the mayor acknowledge that and say this is a good thing?
I don't think the mayor has acknowledged it, or but I don't do it for any public acknowledgement or some leader in government to tell me, hey Rick, you're doing a great thing. I'll tell you what I do it for, man. I do it for each and every woman that comes through that program and that hunts me down and runs up to me and grabs my hand, right? Grabs my hand and vociferously shakes it and looks me in the eye and says, thank you. Thank you for doing this for women. I truly appreciate that. That's why I do this program.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you've now have any of these women ever come back to you afterwards and said, hey, this saved my life? Like they ran into the situation where they needed to use a weapon?
I've had quite a few that have actually used their guns. Whether they actually had to fire it at someone, actually shot someone, or they brandished it and the bad guy didn't stay around. Quite a few of them have gone on to get concealed carry permits. I mean, in the years in which they come to bring other people, whether it's family members or neighbors with them. So there's sort of an organic growth that happens with doing this event. There's some ladies that haven't missed a single year, and then there's a few who will come, a year.
Rick, you still there? We might have lost Rick for a moment. Can you get a hold of Ted Nugent? He's into that. Is Ted Nugent out in Michigan?
What'd you say about Ted Nugent?
Oh, there you are. I didn't hear anything you said for the past minute or so.
I hear he's from Michigan. I don't think he's in Michigan now, but I think he has Michigan roots.
Okay. So you actually blanked out there for about a minute while you were talking. You're saying that you had women come back to you. Some women had to use it, and it was an organically growing movement. And then we couldn't hear anything else.
Yeah, I mean, some people come every year, some come every other year, some take a year off, some take 2 years off, but they always keep coming back, man. And when they come back, they bring other people with them, and that just fuels the organic growth of it. Believe it or not, after having done this event for 8 consecutive years, I still come across people locally who haven't heard of the event at all. And so that's my challenge, to make this event such a media spectacle that you have to hear about it. And, part of it, if I had some media support, man, where I could get some local, regional, or national coverage where people actually know that this program exists. As a matter of fact, I'm very thankful for you on having me on this show to talk about the things that I'm doing to help fuel knowledge of this event, man. And hopefully there's some women or people who are listening to this podcast and this live cast, and if they're not coming, maybe they can pass it along to someone who is in the general area about it. Cast a net far and wide and see what manifests itself.
Maybe you should try breaking a Guinness Book of World Records.
Hey, man, I'm going to keep bettering my best, man.
Okay, so
there's probably someone behind me chasing me, but I'm so far ahead I don't even see them. And you know what? It's like the rabbit and it's like the what's that old fable, the tortoise and the hare, right?
yes.
The rabbit got so carefree and confident that the tortoise overran him and overcame him. Right? I'm not even looking backwards, man. Full steam ahead. If you're behind me chasing me, I'm not letting up. You're not going to catch me. But still keep trying, though.
That's true. You got to keep moving. So Irina, do you have a PayPal link? Irina is asking for one. We can probably put that in the
Yeah,
chat.
I'm at info.
Just type that into the private chat. I'll go ahead.
I'm at info, INFO, at DetroitCCW.com.
And that's your PayPal handle.
Let's see.
Info at Detroit CCW.
Yeah, info, INFO at DetroitCCW.com.
Okay, I'll drop that in the chat. Right, there you go, everyone.
Let me see if I scroll down. I might see a spot where I can actually type it in. I'm not seeing where I can type it in.
Oh, since you're on the guest StreamYard, you can't. But I just dropped that.
Oh,
in the
there it is.
chat.
Yeah, there you go. No Chill West typed it. Info at Detroit. Okay, good. Yeah, and if people are on what's that other? Because it's still brand new to me. What's the one?
Instagram?
Where's $? Username? What's that? Not Instagram.
TikTok?
What's that one people are using nowadays? Hold on. I'll tell you in a minute.
I think you're on TikTok?
You know the one. What is it? Not TikTok.
Twitter?
Man, I'm so embarrassed, right? Say, hey, what's your handle? It's like, hey, that's all because it's brand new to me.
That's okay. There's a lot out there.
Cash App, man.
Oh, Cash App. Okay, now I get it. I thought
Cash
you were talking
App.
about social media.
My Cash App ID is Don Rick Ector. How embarrassing, right? Asking for donations and don't know how to tell people to get it to you, but that's all right. I got it together before the show ended.
What was it again? Cash App what?
Made it just in time. Got it. But I mean, you know what? That's great, man. Come on to the show and you start talking about all the passions that you have, man, whether it's empowering women how to defend themselves and you get so caught up in the program, you forget to tell people how to support you. Isn't that crazy?
It happens. That's why I make sure to put people's links in the description ahead of time. That way it's always there.
Oh, and if people are curious about the events and stuff that I do, have everyone go out to my YouTube channel. My YouTube handle is Detroit CCW. I have over 2,000 videos, but don't worry about there being so many videos. I have them in different categories. Look for the category that talks about my free women's shooting event. I have like a annual video where I do like a review of that year's event. So people can actually click on year by year and see each year the progression and how many women started out and how the event has grown and that how we're actually out there with women teaching them how to shoot. So if they really want to get an idea as to what we're actually doing, those 8 previous years worth of videos are out there where we do like a recap of what happened during the event. And once this year's event is over, I'm going to have a 9th annual recap video to show all the pretty people, with all the pretty target silhouettes, with all the holes that they made on them. It's going to be great.
Oh, good. So I just dropped your YouTube link in the chats for everyone to see. If you're on Facebook right now, that would not post to Facebook. I'm looking at it right now. Facebook's pretty funny that way. I guess they don't like when you post a leak and it's sending their business elsewhere.
You know, people, when they hear I have over I know people have said, man, you have over 2,000 videos at YouTube. I'm like, yeah, actually it's like 2,200, but I'm just rounding to the nearest thousand. And like, well, how do you get so many videos? Say, look, man, I started 10 years ago and I would just consistently make a video and publish it, right? And you look up and 10 years later, that's how you get 2,000 plus videos. You just constantly do something over a long period of time, and eventually it adds up.
Well, you do have a lot of testimonials on here too. That's pretty cool. I'm surprised. Well, this is where you can see where the
testimonials are good too, man. You know what? It's one thing to tell people that you're a good trainer, but it's another thing. It's another thing to actually have your customers say how good you are. Because if I tell everyone I'm a good trainer, that's just, puffery, man. I mean, everybody's going to say they're a good trainer. No, I want you all to see the testimonials from my actual customers and program participants to tell you what they thought.
So Irina has a question for you. She says, how does the racial profile go, as all women need to be protected? Irina might need to suss that out a little more.
Well, I'll tell you. With regards to participation in my program, I get every possible conceivable race, color, and creed of women. I don't turn any woman away. I welcome all women. And, every now and then I'll get some flack from a guy. A guy will say, well, why are you doing it just for women? I'm like, well, 800 men are getting raped in the city of Detroit. 800 women are getting raped, I'm sorry. I'm focusing on women. I need to address this women's problem. You're laughing, but I'm serious. We have 800 women getting raped in Detroit every year.
No, I believe you. I just was laughing because that's a good point. Good point to make to a man. So that does make a lot of logical sense there as to why you would want to focus on that demographic.
Well, the thing is, the thing that I tell people, man, is that whatever inspires you, that's what you have to do. In terms of this women's event, it came out of inspiration, or whatever it is, it's like, how would you like to see the world if you could have some say so as to how it can change? What contribution would you like to make? And the contribution that I personally wanted to see was less women being raped, less women being attacked, and how I could help them empower themselves. Like, I don't want to be every woman's bodyguard. I would rather empower each woman to be her own bodyguard to protect herself and her family. That's my contribution.
That's a very good calling to have. So it's been about an hour. I think it's time for us to close up. I feel like we've exhausted as many subjects as we can. So unless there's something else that you want to, say to the audience or to anyone that might be watching this in replay.
Well, I would say, hey, I want to thank you all for dropping in and making me feel welcome. And I do want to say that if you believe in what I'm doing, empowering women to take on a more active role in their personal protection, please consider sponsoring us with a donation. It would be gladly appreciated. I'll put it to good use, and I'll produce a year-end video where I show you all the smiling faces of all the women that you all help to empower. It's going to be a great event, and I look forward to being a part of it. And I want to say to Old School Wolf, hey man, thanks for having me on today.
I am very happy to have you. I'm always trying to. You're a very uplifting person. We need that. We need those positive vibes. You got a good message. So I try to focus on people that's going to bring out the good message, not the doom and the gloom. So thank you everyone for watching us tonight. Been with us all night. Thank you everyone that's watching this in replay. Again, big tech is censoring us. So the best way to get the truth out there is to share this video. And if you are one of those people watching this in replay, please leave a comment down below. Let's have a discussion. Let's learn how to talk with each other as opposed to talking at each other. And Irina, no, this is not Noah, but keep guessing. You're nowhere near it yet. Okay, everyone. Thank you again, and have a good night.